backwoods night. Red lights cutting through the pine in flight. Bigfoot stomping with his youngling beard. Whispers of tales that ain't too clear. UFOs buzzing solo through the haze. Howling banshees set the forest ablaze. Jersey devil howls drink rays to the sky. Drunken cryptids party until the morning's night. Yeah. It's showtime, running wild in the moonlight. Stars burn down, watch the freaks all take flight.
To good times.
Raise your glasses to the mysteries divine. It's showtime.
Welcome back to another laryngitis episode of the Drunken Cryptids. I am still fighting laryngitis, but the show goes on. I do want to shout out Blade Media. Thank you, Dylan, for the hard work. Check out blademedia.com, you guys. And of course, the big news is we are talking about the Arkansas Cryptid Fest in June 6th, 2026 at Old Bart's Inn, North Little Rock, 600 North Broadway. It's an all-day event. It is free to the public. There are VIP paid speakers, and there will be guest speakers that will be free as well. They will be a casting class. There's going to be a DJ. There's going to be bubbles. There's going to be a Bigfoot calling contest as well. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on, you guys. More news you go to, there is the Facebook page, and we'll have the links posted in the show notes. So go check it out, and there is the event on the Drunken Cryptids Facebook page. Let me get into tonight's guest. I met Jake. I've been following Jake a little bit through, the great guys, Justin and Jake, Cryptids of Corn, and seemed like a hilarious, funny guy. We met at Ohio at the Ohio Bigfoot Jamboree. I think we kind of hit it off. We were cracking jokes, making fun of folks around us, and kind of making fun of each other. We kind of had to do that. So we got to talking, and going through his research and what led him on the journey of Bigfoot, Sasquatch. And as we come on the show, and he was gracious enough to grace me with his presence. So he's going to do a lot of the talking because I'm still fighting that damn laryngitis. So Jake, welcome to the Drunken Cryptids, brother. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So,
I love
so,
the hat.
oh, thanks, man. Yeah, well, and people ask me about the hat, and it's kind of a weird story. Well, not really a weird story. It's it folds into itself a little bit. But back right there at the beginning of COVID, well, right before COVID in 2020, my son was about a year and a half old, and he got obsessed with Toy Story 4, and so he had to dress like Woody every day for about 2 years. And I had like this old piece of crap straw hat that sat on top of my bookcase here in my office. And one day he saw it and he's like, "Dad, you have a cowboy hat?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "We got to be cowboys together." So he made me wear this hat every weekend. And so finally I was like, this thing's scratchy, it's uncomfortable. I got to get me a decent hat. So I shopped around, found something I could actually wear on the weekends. And I'd never been a hat wearer, like ball caps or anything like that. It just happened. I was on a video chat with Shannon LeGros of Into the Fray, and she was talking to Jeremiah Byron. I don't know if you know him or not. And I had worn my hat on a couple of video chats, and I did not wear my hat one time. And Jeremiah was like, "Jake, don't you usually wear a cool hat?" And I was like, "Son of a bitch!" Now people know me as the hat, so I'm stuck with it. So I've kind of just rolled with it ever since.
I'm with you on that one. The backwards hat for me was an accident. I can't remember what I was doing last year, and I might have been with Jason Kinsey, Search for Sasquatch. We were filming up in Northwest Arkansas. And like the first day, I didn't wear a hat. I think the next day, I put the hat on, just kind of spun it backwards and kind of going about my thing. And then the next thing I realized is that every time I was doing something or out public, I would put the hat on backwards. Yeah. So now whenever I do anything, it's the backwards.
Yeah, I'm just another cryptid guy with a cowboy hat. I'm like, here we go. But
I like it.
yeah,
Well,
yep.
if you do see my camera turn off, that's so that the camera can focus on you and stuff like that. And I'm probably coughing out. So if it gets quiet, it's because I've muted it to cough.
All right.
But brother, man, I tell you what. So why don't you tell everybody real quick, about you, how you got involved in this, and let's jump into it.
Okay. Well, like a lot of people, I I got into the paranormal and um, UFOs were my original passion. But when I was 8 or 9 years old, I found my first paranormal amalgamation book in my school library that had a chapter on Bigfoot and Loch Ness monster and Atlantis and the crystal skulls and UFOs, and I was always fascinated with that subject matter. And I'm 44. I was born in 81, so I kind of grew up during the unsolved mysteries era. I was 12 years old when the X Files came out in 1993. And, I live in a suburb north of Dayton, Ohio, so like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has always been in my backyard. I pretty much grew up about 5.5 miles down the road from the runway at Wright-Pat. UFOs were actually like my original passion. As I got older, through my teenage years and stuff, in the early 2000s, like like everybody else, I kind of thought we'd be, or maybe I was just the naivety of being a kid. I thought we'd be further, and I kind of got disillusioned with UFOs. But I always read everything I could get my hands on. Whether it was UFOs or like Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods, um, Michael Cremo's Forbidden Archaeology. So like I've always been into the weird and the strange. I never was specifically into cryptids per se. I was like, like you were telling me about, one of your upcoming interviews, and so I've always had a broad interest in just the strange, whether lost civilizations. With the exception of ghosts, ghosts just really kind of aren't my thing. Not that I don't believe in them. I think there's a phenomenon there, but just the whole ghost hunting thing is just not doesn't have much appeal to me. I don't know what it is. It just not my thing. But everything else, pretty much, I've always been interested in all aspects of the broader paranormal, and
Well,
of
for
course,
me, ghosts are what brought me into this fold. Honestly,
okay,
being from northern Utah, we grew up with, sightings would be in the newspaper. My step grandpa kept the scrapbook full of sightings. So it was for me growing up, Bigfoot, it was just like anything else. It was there,
right,
and but we lived as a kid. We lived in a haunted house, and it was really haunted. I mean, it was not. This was. I mean, it was. Yeah, we didn't live there very long. Obviously, we had like the Mormon Church come in
right,
and bless it. We had the Catholic Church come in and bless it, and we moved. I mean, it was
yeah,
that bad. So,
right,
and by that, and I was a kid in the library like you, but I was reading on UFOs as well, and ghosts, and
right,
vampires, and werewolves,
yeah.
and whatever I could get my hands on. Man, I was digging it. I was the weird kid in the library, and I own that badge,
Yeah,
and I still do. I mean, my library is full of odd, strange books, and I love it.
absolutely. I mean, I remember going to my local library and checking out pretty much every copy I could get my hands on of that Time Life Mysteries of the Unknown. It's got a book on psychic powers, a book on Bigfoot, a book on all these different things, man. And I just remember those. It was like anything I could get my hands on, I would read it. And I did read stuff on, ghosts, like I think the Flying Dutchman, the ghost ship. That's a good one. I mean, so it's not
But
like
you could
I'm
tie that in with the
disinterested in
Bermuda
it.
Triangle too, though, if you wanted to.
Right. Yeah, Bermuda Triangle was another
Yep.
one I was fascinated with. So I've had a broad interest in the larger paranormal for a long time. But Wright-Patterson Air Force Base being right next door to me, and its connection to Roswell, and everybody, when you grow up around Right Pat, everybody's got a second, third hand story about somebody they knew that worked with somebody or saw something at Right Pat, that had to do with something alien per se. I've never seen a UFO. Or anything that I'd be like, hey, that's not normal. And I guess that's the problem when you grow up between an Air Force base and the Dayton International Airport on the west side of you and Right Pat on the east side of you, is that you're just used to seeing lights in the sky. I mean, I've seen so many low flying aircraft, just like Blue Angels, because we have the Dayton International Air Show at the airport, and then Right Pat's right there. So like, I mean, the United States Air Force Museum's there. Like, I've walked up and touched, a B-2 stealth bomber that they have in there. It's just one that, like, I mean, you go there because it was free growing up, so you know what these planes look like. You see them flying overhead. So I guess you get to the point where you just become immune to sky traffic, I guess. But I've never really seen anything that I could out of the ordinary. I haven't seen anything cool like a black triangle or anything like a flying disc. But uh, but yeah, I kind of got disillusioned, and like a lot of people, like in the mid 2000s, like Monster Quest came out, and I was just fascinated with it. And so I watched all that stuff, and then I was always very happy to be a armchair enthusiast, just to sit here, come home, watch the TV shows, pick the books up, whatever. But I didn't have it's not that I didn't have the interest to get out and start investigating on my own, but I didn't have just with the regular life, wife, kids, other hobbies, hunting, fishing, motorcycles. Like I didn't have time to go traipsing around the woods for cryptid, But I had an odd encounter when I was 12 years old. So my best friend was a few years older than me, and he lived in the house behind me. And he didn't live directly. His house was kind of offset, so like the his backyard came up about a third of the way um, against my back fence, and then the other's neighbor was like the other 2/3. And he had a detached garage that set back against a small little 3-foot chain link fence. So we'd jump the fence to go back and forth to each other's house. And there was one night I remember it specifically, and I'm 99% sure it was the summer of 1993, but it could have been between 92 and 94, because him being a few years older than me, I think I was 12 at the time when this happened. He'd have been about 15. Um, and my mom, I remember it distinctly because her and my stepdad were split up at the time. Went with her friend to a Firehouse concert, the band Firehouse, in Cincinnati. And so she asked my friend Jeff, she was, hey, can you spend the night over here? And he'd spend the night at my house, I'd spend the night at his house. And so it wasn't like an unusual thing, but my mom being, over an hour away and at a concert, she kind of had him over there hanging out with us because I had a younger brother and sister. My brother was 10. My sister would have been about 8 at the time. My brother, my brother, me, and Jeff kind of had this weird encounter in our backyard. At one point during the night, we decided we were going to go over to Jeff's house to get a Sega Genesis video game, and we knew his dad was down at the local pub getting a bite to eat. He was going to be gone, but he was retired Air Force, so he was super anal. Like he didn't leave lights on in the house, he didn't leave doors open, didn't leave the gate to the backyard open. So we jump the fence and we walk up the side of the garage, and we get to it and realize Jeff's dad left the garage door up. It looks like the light and the light in his kitchen's on through their big back bay window, and the gate's open. We were like, man, is somebody, your dad's truck's not here, and we're kind of like, man, is somebody in Jeff's house? And so us being the little 12 and 15-year-old kids that we're gonna Scooby Doo this, and we're gonna sneak around the other side of the garage and see if we can get a better look through the bay window, just to make sure nobody's like breaking into his house. And we get halfway behind the garage, and we told my brother Josh not to come with us. Hey, just stay here with my sister. But my brother was kind of hanging out the back door, and Jeff would have been to my left, and my peripheral vision, I see like this long shadow run, and then the chain link fence rattles. So I mean, and we're close to it, so it's like the garage. There's like maybe 4 feet, and then the chain link fence. Well, I turned and I was gonna say, "Damn it, Josh!" And when I turned and looked, I could see my brother was still up on the porch, hanging out the back door, and on the fence was this small humanoid-looking creature. And I want to be very clear. I couldn't tell if it had hair or what. It was just completely black. And it sat there on the fence with its, like, I could see the side profile of it, its knees jutted forward like it was crouching down and holding onto the fence with its arms, and then its feet were underneath it. And what I realized was, because I thought my brother tried to climb the fence and fell off. And when I turned and looked, I realized it wasn't my brother. I'm like stunned. I saw it. My buddy Jeff saw it. My brother saw it. And it sat there for a few seconds, jumps down, and our backyard was weird. So, like, it was partially fenced. So it was like fenced in a U, but like up by the front of our house was not fenced in. It jumps down, runs to the shadow of the neighbor's privacy fence, and then is gone. And that was like I said, it was when it jumped off the fence and stood up, it was about 3.5 feet tall, and it was completely dark. I couldn't tell you if that was just it was dark skin or black skinned, or I mean, when I mean black, I'm talking jet black, like ink black, like the black is the safe right here. Um, or if it had black fur. I couldn't tell because it stayed in the shadows the whole time. We basically just saw a good outline of it. Um, so that happened back in around '93. That was like the only weird thing that I ever had. And then growing up, you always second guess yourself. You're like, that could have been anything. But I knew it wasn't a raccoon. I knew it wasn't like it was always one of those things I came back to. And this is pre-internet. This is pre-X Files. So it's one of those things where it's like I hadn't heard like my people were from West Virginia. Like I had never heard of the Minerva Monster. Like I'd never heard of the Ohio Grassman. If Bigfoot existed, that was something in the Pacific next Northwest or maybe down in Florida, skunk ape type stuff. So I kind of always just had that in the back of my head. Over the next year or so, me and my buddy Jeff would talk about it because, especially like, after the time change right now, and we're jumping the fence to go back and forth to each other's house, and you're like, man, it's freaking dark out here. Hope that thing's not around. I don't know what the hell that was. And, as years go by, I kind of question myself, like, what did I really see there? And I kind of just put it out of my mind. And, thought maybe was it a shadow person that people see, or I kind of went back and forth for years about like what this could have been, and then I kind of just set it aside because I never could, put it in a box. Fast forward to 2016, my wife and my daughter talked me into getting a dog. Of course, they want a dog. Dad doesn't want a dog. No, now Dad's stuck with the dog, so I have to be at work at 6 a.m. So I normally get up at 5, get ready, out the door in about 30 minutes, and got a 25-minute drive to work. So I started getting up at 4:30 a.m. to walk the dog. And this would have been the first Monday of October. I believe it was October 3rd, 2016. So this is like the second week um, we, me and my wife started walking the dog in the morning. The week before, we started taking turns. So we'd had the dog about a month and a half, but my daughter started kindergarten that year, and it's all day. So we would drop her and the dog off at my father-in-law's because they just gotten a new puppy. So, and my dog was a rescue. He was about a year and 10 months. So um, come September, they're like, hey, we're going to sell the house and we want to move out to the country. So you can't bring the dog over because we're going to have people in and out doing work. We're like, okay. So the week before, I think Monday and Wednesday, I walk the dog. Tuesday and Thursday, my wife walks the dog. We flip a coin on Friday. So now it's Monday again. I walk out my front door, and my house is on a hill. So if I'm looking out, the hill runs high side down like this. And at the bottom corner, right on the edge of my yard, the neighbor's yard, is this huge pine tree. Well, I walk out, come down my driveway, walk down the sidewalk. As I get to the pine tree, my dog lunges at the pine tree. And I'm thinking, it's a cat, maybe a raccoon, and I'm hoping it's not a skunk because my dog had already been sprayed by a skunk twice at this point. We've had him less than 2 months. I'm like, I do not feel like dealing with this at 4:30 in the morning. I'm already pissed off because I have to get up half hour earlier than I normally am. So I come past the pine tree and up my neighbor's driveway a little bit and expecting to see, like I said, a raccoon or a cat or maybe even a rabbit. And I see this figure squatted down and it stands up. And I mean, it's maybe 10, 15 feet away from me and my dog. Stands up, and I'd say I would have guessed it's about 3.5 feet tall. I'm 5'11" and a half, and I would have said it was about waist high to me, which my waist is about 41, like at my or hip height. Um, so about 41, 42 inches. That'd be about waist high to me. But it stood up, and it was the color. The best way I could describe it, it was a brownish gray, like the color of a cottontail rabbit. So not a solid color, but like multicolored, kind of like the fur on a cottontail rabbit. And it steps out and it walks uphill, and right at the corner of my house is a tree. And when it gets to the top of the hill where the tree, it reaches up like this to put its arm against the tree like it was bracing itself. And I'm just standing here stunned. So it walks alongside my house, and then I have a fence up, but my neighbor doesn't. But there's all this honeysuckle and just brush on their side of the yard, and it walks into this brush and is just gone. You good?
Yeah, I'm writing notes, and I have somebody start the vehicle up.
Okay. I was about to say I didn't know if we were getting some interference there. Sorry.
Oh no, you're doing
um,
great.
okay. So I stand there stunned for a few moments, and I remember when this is happening, I'm saying to myself, I'm not really seeing this. Like it was this weird situation that's never happened to me before, where like my brain wasn't believing what my eyes were telling it, and the best way I could describe it is it looked like a brownish gray miniature patty. Like if you shrunk, like it never turned and looked at me. I only saw it from behind. But if you shrunk Patty from the Patterson Gimlin film down to 3.5 feet tall, it had like it walked like that. It kind of had that waddle in its step, kind of like Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones. And so finally, I collect myself. I keep walking my dog, and 30 minutes later, I get back and I stop at that spot, and I'm like, I had to have imagined that. Come in, I get ready from work, I leave for the day. I say nothing to my wife about this because I know if I tell her, she's gonna be like, "Man, you watch too much Monster Quest. You gotta, all those TV shows, you're seeing things." So I don't say anything to her. The next morning, it's her turn to walk the dog, and she's out. I get up, and I'm getting the dog's food ready, and she comes in, and I can tell she's upset, and I'm like, what's wrong? I'm like, is there some crackhead out here messing with you? You know what I mean? Like, you never know what you run into these days out in the, it's like, uh, and she's like, what do we have around here that is about 3.5 feet tall that walks on two legs? I'm like, did you see a raccoon? She goes, no, this thing didn't have a tail. It was like a little furry person. And I was like, fuck, I saw that yesterday. Like I really did see that. Like I'd convinced myself that I had not seen this. And, you know, so me and her talk about it. Um, I have her sketch it out because she's really good at drawing. I'm not. And I go to work and I spend my entire day at work. I get nothing done. I'm on YouTube the entire day looking at videos of raccoons walking on two legs, possums walking on two legs, just trying to run down everything I can do. She pretty much does the same thing. We come home and she's like, I can't explain what I saw. And I'm like, I can't explain that either. Like it was something definitely weird. So, and we're in the suburbs, but we are about a mile and a half east. Like if you walked a mile and a half, if you could, or as the crow flies, west of us is the Great Miami River, and then you travel up our main state route here 4 miles, you're into what we call the country here in Western Ohio. It's cornfields, all the stuff you saw when you were driving through to the Jamboree. It pretty much looks that way. I'm about an hour south of Justin and Jay, so it pretty much just looks like that. So you start getting out into the cornfields and the wood patches and the forests.
Well, let me ask you some questions real quick. The 2016 sighting, how far away was that one from the 1993 sighting?
Mile and a half.
Okay. So, in the house y'all are living in, the neighborhood, was that the new neighborhood?
No. So, I mean, it's not an. So, you mean a new neighborhood? Is it like a new construction neighborhood?
Yeah. For
No,
that time
no.
for in
So,
2016. So how old? I mean, how old was the area?
the houses here have been here since the early '60s,
Okay.
and then and the house that I grew up in, it gets better here. So, um, okay. So, I was friends with Ken Gerhart on Facebook, so I sent him a private message. I was like, "Hey, me
I
and my
just saw
wife
him
had
this.
this."
I just saw him last weekend.
Oh yeah, he's a great dude. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, me and my wife saw something that I'm not familiar with. Have you, I mean, ever run across any reports of any like small, like miniature type Bigfoots? And he's like, yeah, I get those all the time. So he actually called me and my wife and interviewed us over the phone, and we kind of relayed all the information to him. And, I sent him a few sketches that my wife had made over Facebook. So that's kind of the end of that encounter right there. But at that time, I really hadn't gotten to this yet. I hadn't connected what I saw in 2016 with what I saw in 1993. To me, those were different things. I hadn't gotten that far yet. A couple years later, Ken Gerhart reaches out to me and he's like, "Hey, I'm doing my Essential Guide to Bigfoot book. Would you mind if I include your and your wife's encounter in there?" I'm like, "Sure, go ahead and use the sketches too." So he puts my wife, and mine's encounter in his Bigfoot book. And a couple months later, I think it was in October of 2019, he was speaking at the Toledo Paranormal Conference, about a 2.5 hour drive north of us. I'd never been to any um, type of con or convention or anything like that before. And this one was super small. It was like a AmVets or a Knights of Columbus. It was, I mean, like a very, very small VFW type thing. So I was like, he put us in his book. Let's just go up there and meet him in person and talk to him. So I go up there and or me and my wife go up there and the kids and um, we talk to him and buy a book from him, whatever. And I kind of get back from that and I'm like, yeah, what do I do now? I'm like, I kind of had this encounter a couple years ago. It's been nagging me. I got to find some more. So I started getting on Facebook and going to some of the groups and stuff. And that's back when they weren't quite as toxic as they are now.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, they've gotten bad now. But I stumbled across Shannon McGrove's Into the Fray public group, and I posted on there. I'm like, hey, has anybody ever seen any like 3.5 foot tall, like mini hairy hominid um, type creatures? And I get some responses, and of course she jumps on me right away. She goes, hey, you want to come on my show? And I'm like, and I at this time I didn't listen to podcasts, and I was not into podcasts in any way, shape, or form. Like I think at that point my experience with podcasts was I'd watched Graham Hancock and Bob Lazar on the Joe Rogan podcast, but I watched it on YouTube. It wasn't like I listened to it or
Yeah.
anything. So, so this is into 2019. So for like the next year and a half, she pesters me, once a month. Hey, are you interested in coming on and talking about your encounter? And finally, I'm like, look, this lady is bugging the shit out of me. Like, let me listen to her podcast, see what she's about, because I don't really feel like going on somebody's show and being told I'm making up a story about a mini Bigfoot or whatever else. From I'm a liar. So I start
Yeah.
listening to her podcast. So finally, me and my wife do her show, and we go on, and it's during the course of her interviewing us that my wife kind of makes the connection, like, hey, do you think that thing that you saw in '93 is the same thing you saw in 2016? And I was like, I really hadn't considered that, but maybe that's possible. So we do uh, we do her show, and then a couple days later, she reaches out to me that she got an email from a guy who grew up in the same suburb I did, and he said back in '93, there's a place here in the suburb I live in. It's called Huber Heights. There's a place there that's pretty well known. It's called the Duck Pond. And, there's these two large ponds. It's like a 15, 20 acre property, but it's got a huge wooded patch in the back. And he goes, back in the summer of '93, me and my best friend, like there was this wood, like our house dead in the back of the duck pond. And, there was this area back there in the woods. Like, we'd go back there and smoke cigarettes and stuff like that. And we were hanging out. We had just graduated that summer, and he goes, my buddy's dog was barking like crazy. So we go out back and we start walking the woods, and we get 15, 20 feet out there, and I turn the flashlight on, and standing in front of us is this 3.5 foot tall, muscular, little mini Bigfoot looking thing, just like your guest described. Um, so the duck pond, there's a creek that runs from this pond, and at its closest point, it runs. It's because it's about 2 miles north of me, but the creek runs past the house I grew up in. At its closest point, it's about 400 yards away from where I saw that small, dark figured creature in '93, and then that creek runs all the way down to the Great Miami River.
That's
So
crazy.
now I'm like, maybe that thing I saw in '93 is one of these other creatures, because like now I'm starting to see a pattern. So I start getting on the BFRO and I start digging through some websites. Um, 8 miles north of me, there's a nature preserve outside of a place called Tip City, right along the Great Miami River. A lady's out there with her 10-year-old daughter, her 10-year-old friend, and their 6-year-old son. And they're out there at this preserve, which is right along the river banks, and all of a sudden something starts shaking the trees, and it gets deathly quiet, and they smell something real bad there. Well, They get scared and run off. Well, the 6-year-old boy gets left behind, and he's the only one who got to look at it. He described to his mom that he saw a 4 to 5 foot tall, hairy man pushing a tree over. So yeah, now and this was in 2000. So I've got so 93 I saw one. 93 this guy at the duck pond sees one. So um, I start telling my best friend about this, and a couple months later, he's like, "Hey, man, I was talking to my wife about it, and she was telling me a story about how her brother swears up and down when he snuck out back behind their house one night in the field behind their house to smoke a cigarette, and he swears up and down he saw like a 3 foot tall hairy man out in the field. Well, where his wife grew up is about 500 yards across the street from that duck pond, and he said he couldn't remember what year it was, but it was sometime in the early mid 90s, right around that time frame. And then in 2011, there's a huge metro park. It's about 300 acres at the north end of our city, and the northern border starts getting into the cornfields and all that stuff. Well, a guy and his dad. There's one large pond and two smaller back ponds, and the one back pond's pretty much, if you don't know it's there, you wouldn't be able to find it because there's no trails that take you directly to it. You kind of have to go off trail to get to this back fishing pond. And I only know it's there because I remember when I was 16, my buddy was working at Wendy's or something. He's like, "Hey man, there's this third fishing pond at Carriage Hill." I'm like, "No, there's not. There's only two." And I guess there was an old Boy Scout camp there in the 70s, got closed down. And the only way you can get there is on horseback unless you know the other access road. So I'd been fishing back there, but 2011, a guy and his dad reported seeing they thought they saw a kid playing in that pond back then. They thought it was weird, and when they got closer, it was this dark, small creature. And when it noticed them, it stood up, and he said it was about 4 feet tall, and it ran off into the woods. And that's 4 to 5 miles. That's 4.5 miles maybe from my house. And the kicker is there's also another creek and stream that runs from the Great Miami River over into this area. And like I can get up on like the Bigfoot mapping project and I can pull up and show you where all these sightings are at and all the creeks and streams. I mean, you're never more than a few hundred yards from this creek to that creek. They'll take you to the next river system. So I start going through all these reports, and I've so far I've got about a dozen in about a 10-mile radius of these smaller, um, 3 to 5 feet tall, like mini Bigfoot type creatures. I've got one report that's it's a little further away. It's about 20 miles away, and it's on another river. So like our Huber Heights, our western boundary basically is the Great Miami River, and our eastern boundary is what they call the Mad River. Matter of fact, our metro park system is called the Five Rivers Metro Parks, so they all kind of come together and meet in Dayton. Um, there's a place outside of Springfield, Ohio, on Buck Creek that contributes to the Mad River. But a guy and his dad were out fishing one night, and he said him and his dad saw these two 4 foot tall hairy creatures come down to the creek bank, get in the river, and they waded across. And they said they specifically stayed and waited to see if because they thought they were like children or something, or like or the juveniles, and they were waiting for like a big one, and they never saw a big one. So in all these sightings, I don't have any correlating large Bigfoot. So it's not like, hey, there's a in June somebody saw a 3 foot one, and in July or August somebody saw a 7 foot one a mile or two away. Yeah, because you could say that's a child and the mother, and you saw the mother, and you saw the child, or whatever else. But my biggest problem is it doesn't make sense as to why you would have your young so close to urban and suburban areas.
That's what I was thinking too. And in some ways, it sounds like I'm a big shark enthusiast. So not only did I grow up on the case like Bigfoot stuff in the woods, I want to go looking for great white sharks because apparently I'm stupid. Nobody knows where like great whites breed at or where the young are kept at stuff. And so two things I was thinking while you were talking was, what if there's I don't know, kind of a training area, if that makes sense, kind of a learning environment, how to, do all that stuff,
Absolutely.
or maybe it's its own separate species.
Yeah. And so here's the kicker is we've got more small hominid fossil evidence than we do large hominid. Everybody likes Gigantopithecus and all that stuff for Bigfoot, but like we have Homo nadeli, we have Paranthropus, we have Australopithecus, we have Homo florenziensis, and then this is something else I want to point out is that like I don't know if you're familiar with Meganthropus, which is a 6 to 8 foot tall hairy hominid in Java. Well, Java is not just a few islands over from Flores, where the Hobbit was at. And when you
Okay,
get
yeah.
to Yep. Okay. Well, when you get to Australia and you talk to the Aboriginals there, they talk about two different types of yowie: a big yowie and a small yowie. And they tell you that the small yowie is not the little, it's not the young from the big one. That they're two different things. And then when you get to the Himalayas, for example, well, get back to the islands here. You still have the orang pendek in Sumatra. You have Homo floresiensis and Flores, which is right in that island chain. But you have and the rock apes of Vietnam are kind of weird because they go everywhere from 3 to 5 feet tall, and then you get to 6 to 7 feet tall rock apes of Vietnam there, and
Yep.
then when you get into the Yeti, there are generally three types of Yeti. There's the large one that's like 8 to 9 feet tall, which a lot of researchers think is a bear, but then you get to the 6 to 7 foot tall Bigfoot type one, and then you get this smaller 3 to 5 foot tall Yeti. So if you throw the one that out, that if you just set aside the one, let's not throw it out, but set aside the one that might be a bear, you still have this big one and this little one. And then when you get to Alaska, you have the same thing. You have, your Bigfoots, but you also have the hairy dwarves of Alaska. And then the only place that gets kind of weird at is when you get down the West Coast, you don't really get a whole lot of small ones. But when you get down into Central America, you have the Duendes, the hairy dwarves in Central America and South America. And then you have various reports. So there's a place, I believe it's called Carlisle, Pennsylvania, south of Hershey, along the Columbia River. They have what's called the Albatwitch, and that's the only other area where I can find a cluster of these smaller 3 to 5 foot tall hairy hominids. And albatwitch is supposed to be like a bastardization of apple snitch, so because it steals the apples off the trees, and they
Yep.
have a festival there every year. But I've come across some other reports, kind of outside of the area, but they're very hard to come by. Mark Muncy from uh, Erie Travels in Erie, Florida, he told me that he's heard of several reports down in Florida, and down there they call these smaller ones stump jumpers down there. Um, and then it's funny, I come across all this information, and so I start going to I go to CryptidCon in 2022, and that's where I met Justin and Jay for the first time. And so I'm thinking like, hey, look, I'm trying to find more information, and I'm researching, I'm taking notes, I'm compiling information, because now I'm like, all right, I've got a mystery in my town here, or in my vicinity, and the best advice I ever got from anybody was from Lyle Blackburn. He said, you know what? Nobody's an expert, but become an expert on the cases in your area. He goes, don't spend all your time driving 3 and 4 hours away. He goes, become an expert in the cases in your area. So if you can drive 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, and you have a lot more opportunity to research these things that are in your backyard than you do traveling all over the place, trying to spend a weekend, burn your vacation time up, and I kind of took that to heart. So I kind of focus on this whole Southwest Ohio area. It's kind of become my thing, and I've done a ton of Bigfoot research because I'm not entirely convinced that. I mean, I'm open to the possibility that these are juvenile Sasquatch, but I'm not totally convinced that they are. And um, so I go back and forth day to day. It's funny because in 2022 at the metro park that I was telling you about, where the father and son saw that first small hairy one. Me and my wife and my son went out hiking one day, and I was just trying to show him deer tracks because I've grown up hunting and fishing my whole life. Like I don't ever remember not know the difference between a buck track and a doe track, for example. And we had a pretty bad drought that year, and we are at the first main pond, and I couldn't find any tracks at all. So I'm like, hey, let's hike back here to the other pond, and I know there's got to be some tracks back there. So we get back there and the water's way down. So I climb down off a bridge. I'm like, all right, there's a doe track. And then I stumble upon these 13-inch tracks that look like traditional Bigfoot type tracks. So I take some pictures of them, and fortunately, when I was at Encounter Quest last year, I had Dr. Meldrum look at them, and he spent some time going over 'em on my iPad and stuff, and he goes 13 inches. And I'm like, he goes, how wide were they? I'm like, they were about 6.5, and he goes, these look very consistent with other tracks I've seen. He goes, I think you have something there. So, and I'm researching these small ones, and then I get thrown a monkey wrench. I get this big, and there are a few larger Bigfoot sightings in my area. I don't want to say that there's none, because there are some 7-foot Bigfoot reports within a 20-mile radius, but they're never. I mean, like I said, like you'll get, like I said, 93. I have my sighting, and then in 2000, somebody has a Bigfoot sighting somewhere else. So I don't want to say that they're not here, because I mean there are larger Bigfoot sightings in the
Well, you got to
greater
remember
Dayton
too,
area.
though, those are only the sightings that are being reported.
Correct. Correct.
So because a
So,
lot of people don't report them.
right, absolutely. And you know what? Like, to be 100% honest with you, if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. We would never have met, because she's the one who really pushed me to go on to do the podcast for Shannon LeGros. And um, that kind of just got me more. And then I started getting more information. And I started being more active. And like now I'm trying to learn more stuff. And that's what really, like, my wife's the one that really pushed me, because I was like, man, I'm like, I got better things to do than, to have somebody tell me I'm a liar because I saw a fucking Ewok in my front yard. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I know it sounds crazy. Like, don't get me wrong. I know it sounds ridiculous that I saw what amounts to an Ewok in my front yard. But yeah, so I've just kind of like really poured my research into this, and then things kind of started just picking up pace with me doing like some podcasts and stuff. And then I spoke at Justin Jay's Ohio Bigfoot Jamboree last year, and gave a presentation. And then I started having some more people come up to me. To rewind a little bit, like last July of 2024, me, Justin, and Jay went up to this marsh preserve that's about a half hour north of them, because I'd had a lady give me a report where um, an old man she worked with, who I think she's an LPN or something like that, like home health care type stuff, was telling her how in this marsh that he saw this small Bigfoot thing that was about the size of a German Shepherd, is what he described it as. Um, so me and Justin go out there, and we did find some smaller footprints, but the problem with small tracks is, they could be kids or smaller people. So you kind of, and none of them really had clear toes or anything like that. But we found a lot of smaller tracks. And then, but I mentioned that when I was giving my presentation last year, and I had a lady come up to me afterwards, and she goes, "Hey, my parents own the property across the street from that marsh." Um, she goes, "I used to play there as a kid." I'd say she's about 50 years old. And she goes, "I used to play back there as a kid, and we would always find these small little teepee structures back there in those woods all the time."
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then it's funny because it gets better. So my wife goes to this lady's gym that's not far from our house, and um, one of the ladies that worked there was like, "Hey, I saw you and your husband were at some Bigfoot thing. What was that all about?" "Oh, he was up there speaking." And she goes, "Oh, what was he talking about?" "Well, he kind of was giving a presentation on these kind of smaller mini Bigfoots." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And so my wife told her about our encounter, and she goes, "Well, she goes, I can't remember." She goes, "It was sometime between 2015 and 2017. Me and my boyfriend were on again, off again, and we got into a fight. So I left where we were hanging out at, and I walked over to the bowling alley, and I stopped at the speedway to get a pack of cigarettes. And behind this speedway is about a 10-acre wooded property. I mean, it's pretty thick back there. I've gone back there and followed up on it. But there's a path that she was cutting through to go to the bowling alley, and she goes, I was cutting through this uh, to go to the bowling alley, and I saw this small thing crouched down." And she goes, and she's one of these people that like rescues dogs, and can't let a dog so she walked up on it thinking she was going to rescue a dog. And she said she actually saw the front of it. She turned around and saw its face, and she goes, it was this small, like 3 to 4 foot tall hairy thing, And she goes, I remember staring at it like, what are you? And she goes, I was really into National Geographic when I was a kid, and my dad always bought me a subscription to National Geographic, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen in there. And she goes, it stood there and looked at me for a while, and then it ran up a tree and just was gone. And where she saw it is about a mile and a half from where I saw it, but it's about the same time frame as my wife's 2016 encounter. She couldn't recollect the exact year, but it's in that same time frame. And it's just like I keep collecting. Matter of fact, this past year at the Ohio Bigfoot Jamboree that you were at, I was talking to a guy. He's in, I think it's Williamsburg, Kentucky, just south of Louisville, and he saw what he said it was 3 to 4 feet tall. It was covered in dark gray hair, and he said he saw its face, and its face looked like a sunburnt Irish person's face
So it's
when he
red.
saw it. Yeah.
Huh.
So, I mean, and then, but yeah, I've been kind of collecting these stories over the last, 9 years, and I've really gotten heavy into the research for like the last five. And I mean, I try to take my kid out as much as I can because he's 7 years old. Try to involve him as much in it. Get out, hike. I I'll go out at night sometimes, but I go back and forth, man. Like we're loud, smelly, hairy people, and out here banging on trees at night. I'm not a huge proponent of that,
Yeah, I don't do tree knocks when I go out. I don't
right.
do.
I mean, I've grown up deer hunting my whole life, and I mean, that's kind of my thing. It's like I don't know why. I mean, I always try to get in at least an hour before legal shooting light, just because I know it takes that long just for everything to calm back down, no matter how quiet you are getting in. So, I mean, thinking that you're gonna catch something while you're out walking in the woods, banging trees has never been my thing. But I just try to get out in the outdoors and try to collect many reports and follow up. I go try to go to all these locations that everybody reports them at too. So that's just kind of where I'm at right now, and just trying to learn as much as I can, and that's I walk my dog every morning still with my cell phone camera ready to go, and it's like now that I'm prepared, I haven't seen anything, but I'm still looking, um, and I know it sounds crazy that you would see something like this in the suburbs, but I did too when I first saw it. But here's the thing. When I started deer hunting back in '94, so I was 13, yeah, so '94, you were allowed to take one deer statewide, either sex in the state of Ohio. That was it. And a lot of guys ate tags because everybody's trying to shoot a buck. I think it was 2017 or 2018. You could take 4 deer in every county in Ohio, and in some counties you could take up to 8 deer. So that's how much the deer population in the last 30 years has grown in Ohio. The Ohio DNR has done a great job of expanding the deer population. And here's the kicker, though, is with the expanding deer population, like we never saw coyotes when we went rabbit hunting, deer hunting when we were kids. I mean, you get coyotes wandering in the neighborhoods now. I've seen coyotes out walk my dogs. You get white-tailed deer wandering into the neighborhood. I mean, you see them. We have controlled bow hunting programs for all the metro parks in the areas. I mean, basically, it's suburban deer hunting in the parks because the population's gotten so large in Ohio. And Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, they've all expanded their deer herds as well. So, like bobcats, for example, were functionally extinct in Ohio 30 years ago. We've got a ton of bobcat sightings. So, with the expanding deer population, you've also had expanding predator populations. So, if like I said, I've seen coyotes in downtown Dayton, and this was unheard of 30 years ago. So if you have these things like the deer in the suburbs, the coyotes are in the suburbs, why wouldn't things that eat those things also be
In the
following them
suburb.
into the suburbs?
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny you mentioned that. Like, I interviewed a guy by the name of Scott Brush, and I'm trying to remember where he's from. Get the notes over here somewhere. But his big push right now is in urban Bigfoot, into the urban areas. Sightings are happening in our neighborhoods. Like where I live at, I've got Camp Robinson right by me. And then even this year, I mean, we had a black bear sighting in Little Rock. In Little Rock, a black bear sighting. I do believe that with we have a huge deer population in Arkansas. I mean, it's deer season now. I mean,
Right.
they're having a good time. So they're gonna, yeah, the predators are gonna be there, and I don't see why they're not here. And let's think about it too, though. We have trash cans,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
we throw
uh,
away a lot of food. Let's be honest.
Food.
We're very wasteful people. So it's just easy food. I don't know why they want to eat our crap, but I mean, seriously. But my question is too on the little ones. You know, and I love the fact that Mandatory he told you to stay in your area, become an expert in your area. What do you think's going on? Do you think this is a whole new species, or do you think these are juveniles, or and of course, again, I know in the research, we change our minds all the time, but
Right.
your heart does weigh somewhere. I mean, that part of
Yeah.
your brain
I
is jumping
my
out, telling
my
you something.
my gut with my gut, I lean towards this is something separate. Um, but I'm open. Like I'm completely open to the possibility that these are juvenile Sasquatch. But like I said, I mean, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Bigfoot Mapping Project app. Um, I cannot tell you how much time I've wasted at work just scouring reports trying to find clusters. I cannot find another cluster outside of the Albatwitch in Pennsylvania that has so many reports of small ones over such a large period of time, And generally, when you see a small one, it's a one-off, or they're almost always with an adult. Like there's all these reports of a big one and the youngs with them. Like, and I just I mean, I have a hard time believing that they're just like, that the urban Bigfoot got lazy and just let their kids run wild. I mean, that is a bold move. I mean, eh, so and like with mine and my wife's encounter in 2016. So like there's a 5 acre property behind us, and it's pretty overgrown with brush and woods and honeysuckle. Like I don't think anything lives back there. So when I think I saw it, and I personally think it was reacting to my dog. So I think had it been an early morning jogger, I wouldn't have seen it. It had just hunkered down. But I think my dog got too close, and my dog flushed it out. And then the next morning, my wife, same thing kind of happened because where she saw it was about 500 yards east of where I saw it. So what I think was happening is it went back into the woods behind my house, kind of hid out for the day. And when my wife saw it the next morning, I think it was trying to work its way back to the river.
That makes sense.
I think they use the waterways to travel, the creeks, the drainage ditches, all that stuff to move up and down. It's to me, it's the most logical thing. I think maybe it wandered up, it kind of camped out, and then was trying to find its way back. But all of these sightings, I can get on a map and hey, if you walk 500 yards, half a mile in this direction, there's a creek, there's a river, like you can get to a major. I mean, you can. So I know it's funny because there's a community Facebook group that I'm on, and a few months back, maybe 6 months ago, I was reading a post where some of the older people that are like in their 60s were like, "Hey, remember, the drainage, the drainage tunnel off of Powell Road, which is right over by my house." And remember when we would go back in that tunnel, and then like you'd basically be able to walk all underneath Huber Heights through this drainage tunnel system. So and I was like, holy shit, like we've got a whole, I mean, like you're talking about people that can stand up. They're like, hey, look, I mean, these are 5 feet diameter. You can pretty much stand up, especially if you're smaller or you're a kid, And, the one guy said how they came up out of the storm drain over by their principal's house, like 2 miles away from where they entered in the storm pipe, back in like the 60s or 70s or something. And it just kind of dawned on me that it's like, man, there's so much that's going on underneath us that you're not even thinking about, especially in the summertime and the drier months where like here the last few years we've had some pretty good droughts here in Ohio. Um, and so, I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for things to move around underneath us. Cave systems, like I said, the creeks, the waterways. I don't know that they're here all the time. They may be transitory. Um, they may follow, like when the corn's gone, they're gone. Um, I had this conversation with somebody else who was talking about how they had some activity at a property in Northeast Ohio, and um, actually not far from Minerva, and they were like, "Hey, like we get activity from like May to end of October," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, two things happen at the end of October. Uh, one, all the corn gets harvested here in Ohio, and two, opening bow season for deer is usually the last weekend of September, and October is usually pretty hot. Like I mean, it was 90 degrees when you were up here.
Yeah.
Was that October 4th? And the rut starts kicking in right about now in Ohio. So two things happen: the corn's gone, and more humans go into the woods. So I think that even Bigfoot, the small ones, either or both. I think that once the corn's gone, because I don't know how it is down here, but or down where you're at, but here in Ohio, if somebody owns 100 acres, 50 of it's corn, 50 of it's soybeans, and they just flip them next year.
Yep. Do the same thing. We have a
So
lot of
yeah,
rice down here, though. Our big thing is rice.
okay,
We're like the world's largest producer of rice.
yeah.
A lot of
So
people don't
we
realize that about Arkansas.
once you get past Columbus, and if you're on 70 and you just drive west, it's just cornfields forever. And I mean that's just an easy food source. So if you're an omnivore, I mean you have corn, soybeans, there's plenty of food, and then there's the animals that feed on that stuff. There's all the small game, there's the deer. So there's plenty of opportunity for anything in this area. And like I said, I don't know if they're necessarily migratory or transitory, but it seems like in this area, like there's plenty of ample food source, especially if you're using the waterways to navigate, because you could take the Great Miami River, which is, like I said, as the crow flies, a mile and a half west of me. You can pretty much navigate that waterway up to about where Justin and Jay are, and then you can hop on another river system and get all the way to Lake Erie. The entire western half of Ohio is navigable by these creeks, streams, rivers, and waterways.
And that makes a lot. I mean, I agree with you. I really do. I mean, that very well, explained. And I do think a lot of cases they do migrate. Now, there was one point in time a couple of years ago, you know, I was thinking that they migrate. In Ohio, for some reason, seems to be like the centralized area where they're coming from the north down to the south, and they vice versa. But then I looked at the size of the sightings, and gosh, I hate that having laryngitis. They're smaller down here than they are going to be up north. And they state, like my research area right now, we can't get into because it is deer season. And the neighboring properties don't want us up there while the deer season is going on. I don't want to be up there while the deer season is going on.
Right,
So I don't want to be
absolutely.
at my team shot. So, but the homeowners are still having activity.
Oh yeah.
To
Well,
where they just
I
end up
mean,
having to buy a big spotlight in their backyard to try and keep them away because now they're getting closer.
well, and so the property that you research, do they allow people to hunt on their property, or is it just
No,
the surrounding property? See,
just
that's
the
the fit
surrounding.
though. And I think that when we're talking about Bigfoot, like I think people need to stop looking at them as a bipedal gorilla and maybe start looking at them as something as more closer to us with near human intelligence. So, you know, these things may know, hey, guess what? There's nobody in the woods on this 100, 200, 300 acre property, but there's everybody in the woods around us. So that place might be a great place to hang out at.
See, I think a lot of military installations are the same way too. You can get permits to go hunt on the up there, but there's not a lot of it.
Correct.
My major sighting was on Fort Hood back in '02,
Right.
and you get sightings on bases all the time.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And I do think that they know that they for some reason they don't know what a cell phone is. They don't know what a
Right.
camera is. They don't have an idea that they're on the internet. But I don't think we give them enough credit. I think sometimes we give them too much credit for being intelligent, if that makes sense.
Um, it's possible. They've been
Like
smart enough to
I
avoid us
broke
this
out
long.
I broke out my camera on my phone and it took off running. It knew what I was doing. No, it didn't. You made a sudden move and it scared it.
Right. Yeah. But and I'm not like, so trail cams are another one. Like, I'm not convinced that they don't give off, they're not emitting some frequency. Like, I've got pictures of deer and
I
coyotes
think
coming
it's
up
a
to my trail
smell.
cams.
I think it's a smell.
Yeah. There could be a smell. Yeah,
It's
and that's
plastic.
just it, though. Yeah. It's plastic. There's electronics in there just because we can't smell it. And, that's something that most people don't understand is how, um, I don't want to say polluted your nose is or your sense of smell is, but it really is. Like the best way I can describe it is my parents were smokers growing up. So when I moved out, I'm not a smoker. When I was out of my parents' house for a while, I remember I was like, man, I can smell all kinds of things that I couldn't smell before. Well, I mean, think about all the exhaust fumes, like living in the cities and the suburbs and all the stuff that's just like and then ask anybody who lives, you leave the city and the suburbs and you move to the country, you're like, holy cow, I can smell all kinds of things once you get your system kind of detoxed a little bit.
Yep.
So, you're bringing in electronics that may have a smell to it, just or, there is the possibility they give off a light source or even they may make a small sound that they can
We
pick
don't
up that
hear.
we can't with
Or
hearing.
even
Yeah.
better, think about your trail cams too. Though, is how many times you got a picture and the animal's looking at the camera.
Oh yeah, I got a ton of those.
Yeah, they're looking right at it, like smile, like they're taking a selfie.
Yep, I've got a picture of a buck coming up and like hitting its nose against my. I mean, it knows it's there. I mean, it's pitch black. This camera, and I got several pictures of deer coming up to my camera, like checking the camera out. Yeah,
Yeah, so I think on that one too. Also, I mean, if they're moving fast too, though, by the time he gets triggered, they're already out of front.
right. But yeah,
You
I've
know,
seen these studies where like people are like, yeah, we researched them. These trail cameras aren't giving off anything. I'm like, they're doing something because even deer are noticing them. Yeah.
everything notices it out there.
Yeah,
They're always looking
everything.
at it.
Yeah, I've got pictures of raccoons on corn piles looking at them. I got deer, coyotes, all. I mean, all of them. Yeah, they all notice it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to me, it's funny, but everybody wants to, because I think the big fear for the normal population of admitting that Sasquatch is real. Okay, so let's think about that for a minute. You know, we go to the woods, we go camping, we go do this, we go do that. And it's fun for most people to be like, ooh, we'll tell a scary story. Ooh, maybe Bigfoot's out here, something. But knowing that he's out there, or she's out there, knowing it's out there, is a whole new dynamic, and people are afraid of it.
Well, and this is where like
And I hope I
I will.
explained that well enough. I think, guys.
Yeah, and there's another issue, and this is where I'll dabble in the Bigfoot conspiracy just a tad here, where the government knows about them. I don't think it's this sinister plot to keep. Let's just say Bigfoot exists, and it is very closely related to us. It's a hominid, like genetically. So, what do you do with them? Like, you want to talk about how you have a problem with Native American reservations? What do you do when you have? I mean, do they have constitutional rights? Do they, I mean, we have never in modern times coexisted with another human species that's, what I mean? Like, so what do you do if Bigfoot does exist and he is a homo something, And that's the problem. It's like, do they have constitutional rights? Do they, are they entitled to the land that they're on? Like, you have all of these, a whole new set of political headaches that, let's just face it, like there's enough political headaches. Nobody wants to deal with that. So
Exactly.
let's just brush that aside. So if you're the park ranger and you tell your boss you saw, no, you didn't. I mean, somebody hit a Bigfoot over. Go get that. Pull that
Yep.
off. We cannot have this. So I don't think it's a. I think it's just them trying to avoid a headache more than it is some sinister, larger sinister conspiracy, if there is one.
No, I agree with you on that one. And I would say, like, the only thing that's happened recently is about almost it'll be a year next month. Gosh, either Washington or Oregon. I don't know if you heard about it or not. The two researchers on Christmas Eve who went out to do a date, investigation, and they found their bodies 3 days later dead due to exposure. Did you hear about that?
Yep. Yep.
So did you hear also though that the county that they were found in has a law in the books to where if you harm any mythological creature, it's like a $10,000 fine and up to a year in jail. Yeah, that's on the books. The law there. That's not the county. That one's in California. That
Right.
you can't harm Bigfoot. Also, the county, their search and rescue, the day they recovered their bodies, that night, their search and rescue team, all of their equipment was stolen. As the sheriff came out and stated, and this was fact. I mean, this you can look this up. This is on the news. If it wasn't nailed down, it was taken. That's a beautiful cut, by the way. So to me, that just says
It's not
something
bad.
odd. So it's just an odd. on that one too. I don't think you're going to go out not paying attention to the weather. When I go out, the weather's the first thing I look at. What's the forecast going
Right.
to be? I'm looking a week out. I'm looking at 6 days out, 5 days out, 4 days out, all the way up.
I will say though, the biggest issue is when you're dealing with any mountain ranges, Appalachia and the Rocky. Anything coming out west it changes so fast out there.
But yeah,
Like I remember it was like that in the Black Hills of South Dakota. The first time I was there in 2014. You look at the weather the whole time you're planning your motorcycle trip out there, and it's like, hey, it looks great, and then you get there, and it's guess what? The forecast is out the window. When you're in any of those mountainous areas, the weather can shift very, very quickly, especially like I said, Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming.
but being from the area too, you know that.
Right,
So you always pack accordingly for it. So
right.
that's what drove me nuts about this thing. These guys were from the area. They've been there before. And there's never been any names released. Nobody's ever came out publicly and said that was my uncle, my dad, my grandpa, my
Right.
brother, my nephew, my best friend. Nothing. Nothing has ever come out of that.
Yeah, yeah, because the first thing I thought of is it had some earmarks of some missing 411 stuff when I came across that. I think David Paulides even commented on that case if I remember correctly. I can't remember what he said, but yeah,
That's odd.
I definitely thought that was an odd one because I mean it hit all the trail marks of a missing 411
Exactly.
case.
Everything for it. And then, they found their bodies pretty quick too, though. That's what, I found kind of funny about that. So normally in these cases too, it takes them a little bit to find them. But, I mean, they were reported missing after midnight on Christmas Day, and then they found them 2 days later.
Yeah,
you know. So it was snowing and stuff like that, but it wasn't like a heavy snow. It was cold, but I don't know, it was odd. And then
yeah, I
all
thought
the
that.
weapons.
Yeah, I didn't think that one didn't set right with me either. I thought that one definitely felt off, and I mean, it does make you wonder. It's like, I mean, are there when you said everything was taken that wasn't nailed down, it's like, all right, I mean, somebody trying to cover their tracks here is like, it's like, what is it? Yeah,
Yeah, because the sheriff's department even had a GoFundMe page set up to help get their, so they could get equipment back for the search and rescue
yeah,
team. And I was like, that is nuts. That's
like I
nuts.
mean, like yeah. So yeah, what was going? Yeah, that's an odd one.
Well, I will tell you this. I do think that you're onto something in that area, and I think what you're doing is awesome. Um, my first thought, go back to the first one in '93, how you said it was crouched on that fence post. Yeah, well, on the fence. One, that's hard to do in the
Right,
dark, you know, because, I mean, the amount of balance you have to be able to do that alone. So that tells me they were gripping very well with their hands and possibly his feet as well, to hold up onto the
right.
fence. And then, everybody, and these are the ones that have been reported in. And I wonder if maybe there isn't, you haven't come across a new type of little hairy man or Ewok, you know.
Right. And like I said, I've come across like there are some sporadic reports across the country. I'll get one here or there. But I don't get clusters of them. It's not like I have other areas where there's multiple sightings. So that's what kind of makes me think that this could be, something separate from these larger Bigfoot. And like I said, I'm 100% totally open to the possibility of these being juveniles. But it just kind of defies logic with all the other reports of because pretty much every other juvenile that's spotted is spotted with a big one, and
Yeah.
it's hard to believe that you would get so many reports of small ones without a correlating large one with them. That's what kind of throws me off. And like, what is it about, this area that's got these, smaller hominids in them? So, yeah,
I'll
I'm
be honest with you.
plugging
I
away
bet
at
the
it.
answer is probably right in front of you, and you just haven't put two and two together on it yet. You know what I mean? So I know
Yeah.
you're going to get to the bottom of it. I know you will.
Yeah, I mean it's frustrating because like I can say, it's like looking back on my encounter, like the neighbor two houses down had a peach tree in their front yard. Um, and there's always peach pits on the ground and stuff. But I mean, hell, the raccoons are bad around here too. So I mean, I can't say that's a food source, but and like you said, Tuesday was our trash day back then. So people put their cans out on Monday. So that's a possibility. You go back through because I really didn't. I really questioned it myself. Like, man, why would these things be in the suburbs? But then it's like, but you know what? I've seen coyotes. The years since I've seen three or four different coyotes in the neighborhood. Deer wander in the neighborhood all the time. So if these things are wandering in, there's other things are going to
Well, think
wander in
about it too,
too.
though. In your neighborhoods too, though. I mean, you got cats and dogs out there all the time. So you
And
think
that's
about a
another.
missing
And
dog, missing cat.
yep, around the corner, I have the typical lady in my neighborhood who feeds all the stray cats, and it's just, I mean, it's a smorgasbord for. I mean, so right there, you've got there's easy pickings if you're eating cats, raccoon. I mean, these are small, easy animals that you can snatch up.
Yep. I mean, it makes sense. It really does. Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna get ready to bring you for a landing. I can do this with you all night long. I mean,
Oh
the
yeah,
conversation.
absolutely, man. I
So,
completely understand.
what are your final thoughts on? Okay, so what are your next steps? So, I mean, what are you wanting to do from here with your research? I mean, is there a research area you want to get into out there? I mean, is there
Um,
something driving you
there's
nuts?
not there's not a specific area. I'm trying to collect more accounts in the area. And my next step is I've avoided doing this, but I'm probably going to get in the community Facebook page and make a post. And it's just one of those things. It's like you got to weed out all these trolls and deal with all the headache. But that's kind of what I'm looking at next is trying to get as many reports and shake as many. I'm gonna try to set up some. I think next year I'm gonna try to set up some library talks, do some presentations for local libraries in the area, see if I can shake loose some more reports because like I said, I have gotten a few more reports that are further away. Like I said, I've got a couple up around Justin and Jay's area. But again, that's the same creek system. That's the same river system that comes down from up north there. So I mean, if they're moving up and down, uh, it kind of makes sense as they would be all up and down. If they're not here now, maybe they're up there. If they're not up there now, maybe they're down here. So that kind of makes a little bit more sense as if they're using the creeks and the streams because all the reports are close to like I said are very close to the creek streams and draining systems to these major riverways and stuff. So I definitely think they're regardless of whether they're big ones or small ones or the juveniles, they're all using the river systems. I'm 100% convinced as a means to move through some, especially some of these areas here that are suburban or urban. Because along the rivers are where all the trees are at. That's where the wildlife still are, and all that stuff.
Well, I got one for you too. I think this might help you out a little bit. So let's talk about ring camps. All right. Okay. Ring cam goes off. Obviously, it can be from a distance. So if they're only going to be about 3.5, 4 feet tall, and you're looking at your ring cam footage, and you're not looking for this, and you just glance at it, your first thought's going to be what? A
That's a
kid.
kid. Yep.
So I'm wondering how many people actually have, potential footage. So if you're listening to the show right now and you're going through and you're looking back and saying, why did we see a kid at 3 o'clock in the morning walking down the
Right.
street?
Yeah.
You know,
That's definitely something I've been considering there. It's funny that you mentioned a kid because when I saw it, like I said, the creature walked up. It's a pretty steep hill. I had my son. He's 7 now, but he was 6 last year, and he's about 3.5 feet tall. So I kind of had him recreate it last year, and he kept wanting to go down on all fours to get up the hill. Like I'm like, no, Everett, stand up. And so that tells me that when this thing walked uphill, it's definitely bipedal because if it was any type of quadruped, it would have went down on its
and drop
hands.
down.
And like I said, when it got up to the top of the hill by the tree, it put its arm up like this to just like it was steadying itself against the tree. Um, and so that's what really stood out in my mind is I could see its arm because it was its right arm and it put it out against the tree and then walked straight on out. So like that's what really it like is impressed in my mind was that thing walking up the hill and it didn't run. It was one of those things where it walked slowly and smoothly like it knew not to jolt because like my dog was like pointing at it. He was like head forward, paw up, like and it's weird because he doesn't act like that. If he sees a coon, he goes ape shit. If he sees another dog, like he's a healer pointer mix, so he's a high energy sniffer. But I've never seen him behave that way. Like whatever this was, like definitely caught his attention. And my wife said the same thing that like he acted weird when he saw it with her. So it yeah. So, like I said, it's definitely, and like I said, it's frustrating. My dog's the only person that's seen it twice.
I think I mean, I'm shaking my head, not in like disbelief, but just like
Right.
how cool. I mean, seriously, how
Yeah.
cool. I mean, that's cool. Oh man! All right, Jake, I do want to say thank you for coming on the show. I mean, if anybody wants to reach out, they've had a sighting or something in the area of these things. Is there any way they can get a hold of you?
You can hit me up on Facebook. Just send me a message on Facebook Messenger. Jake Dressel, guy in the hat. You'll see me on my profile picture there. So um, if they you want to reach out to you and you can forward me info.
I
I'm
can do
okay
that.
with that too. And hey, if I can, maybe I can make it down to Arkansas next year.
Man, I would love for you to come down with Justin and Jay. I'll tell you that right
All
now. That would
right,
be
I'll
awesome.
see what I can do.
All right, brother. I appreciate it, man.
All
And thank
right.
you guys for listening again to another episode of Drunk Crips. Don't forget to check out our Patreon page. Don't forget to check out Buy Me a Coffee. If you've had an encounter and you want to come on the show, email me, drunkencryptids@gmail.com. Follow me on all your social medias. Thank you for liking and sharing. And until next time, I haven't come up with the ending phrase yet, so I guess I'll just say keep on squatching, man.
I can do anything that I want. I can do anything that I want now. I can do anything that I want. Hey, hey, if it is to be, you know that it's up to me. I'm headed to the front. I can be anything that I want. I can be anything that I want now. I can be anything that I want. Hey, hey, if it is to be, you know that it's up to me. I'm headed to the front. 'Cause I'm the king of the